Have you ever wondered what you're supposed to do to finish your sugar flowers? Do you need a calyx? Do you need to dust it? Today, I'm going to show you exactly that. Let's get to the video. If you are new here, I am Alexandria from Finespun Cakes. This is part 2 of a 2-part series on making a peony bud. So I recommend you watch part 1 first. I'm gonna link it somewhere in this video as well as in the description box below so you can check that out. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already and give me a thumbs up if you do enjoy this video. Before we get to the video, comment below and tell me, what do you struggle with most when you're making your sugar flowers? Is it overdusting, or is it shaping your petals so that the veining is just right? I would love to hear, and I will try and help you out in a future video. So without further delay, let's get to this one. So you can see the 2 sizes I made. So I have the 2 larger ones here and then the 4 smaller ones here. I like to mix and match them on my cakes depending on the size. I have got some gum paste here that has been colored with gooseberry coloring and spruce green. I'm giving that a good knead with some shortening. And then remember, we will be using our elongated leaf cutter and our small teardrop petal cutter. Once that's nice and smooth, I'm gonna roll this out to a number 5 on the pasta machine. And quickly, I will show you how this is gonna fit on. So you can see that's gonna cover the entire styrofoam area. If you happen to have a styrofoam ball that's bigger, or if you have more area to cover, just go ahead and use a larger calyx. That's pretty much it. And then these guys will be coming up above there as well. So let's get back to rolling. For each bud, we are going to need 3 of these teardrop shapes, and then we're also going to need 3 of these elongated leaf shapes. Now I'm going to use this in green gum paste that I used to cut out the first part of the calyx to cut out the second part. We are just going to roll this to a number 4 instead because this shape is a bit more delicate. So we need a bit of extra thickness. Now I will cut 3 elongated leaf shapes per bud. Always make sure to cover these as you work. We're going to start by working with 3 of our teardrop shapes. And it's a very similar technique to before. We thin out those edges. And these ones I like to widen a bit as well. If the shape isn't something you like, just go ahead and change it. You can manipulate your petals however you want. Don't be constrained by whatever cutters you have. So flip all those over to the edge. And these ones we are really going to thin out. So a lot of pressure very close to the edge of that calyx. And then a few extra spots just to give us more texture. And then what I like to do to let it ruffle a tiny bit is just kind of press it together a little as I'm working on the others. Flip all those over. And again, grab your gum glue. And we are going to glue just underneath the top edge, just like we did the outer 3 petals on our buds. So just a couple millimeters in from the top edge, and then the 2 sides and in the center. Try and keep that ruffly texture. I've got one of my muted pink buds, and basically what you want to do is just cover up the styrofoam. Try and make them as evenly spaced as possible. So just like that. Press it down at the base and in a few spots here to make sure that it is stuck down. Looks like it's all covered up. And look at it from the top as well to make sure you like the shape. You might want it a bit more rounded, or you might like it really loose and organic. It's totally your personal call. So that's the beginning of the calyx finished. And now we will move on to the elongated leaf shapes. Grabbing all 3, as well as my Dresden tool. So start by thinning out these edges with the medium ball tool. And then we are going to grab the wider end of the Dresden tool, and you're going to drag it, putting most of the pressure just near the tip. Drag it all the way down, just letting it curl however it wants. And then you can give it a little extra twist if you want. And this base part is what's going to be attached to the flower, so you can give that a tiny flatten just so it's easier. And I'm gonna just let these par dry for a minute or 2, just so that they're not flopping down when I add them onto the bud. In the meantime, I'm going to work on the other calyxes, and I'll see you in a sec. So I've added the first layer of calyxes onto all of my buds, and I've also prepped all of the next layer. So I'm going to show you how to attach these now. So these ones are more par dried than the others, so we'll start with them. We want them to be slightly pliable, but firm enough that they're not going to be falling over. So on the back side, we just put a bit of our gum glue or water at the bottom. I would say the bottom quarter or so. And I like to let these kind of take whatever shape they want. Not too fussy about it. They are going to be under the flower, but you still want it to look nice. All right, so let's grab one of these and take that side with the glue on it and attach it right at the intersection of 2 of the first calyx layers. So it's going to be covering where those two are meeting. So attaching that firmly on. What you can do if you feel like you're flattening it a bit too much is grab your Dresden tool and just firmly press that on. And then just move your way around and attach all three. So these are really holding their shape now, which is exactly what we want. And the calyx is really pretty. So I'm gonna allow this to dry overnight upside down, just so our calyx doesn't fall over. And then tomorrow we're gonna be able to dust it. Let's do our muted pink one next. Again, just attaching that on at the intersection to cover that up. It has a really nice organic shape when you allow those calyxes to par dry. So I will also leave this one upside down and finish up the rest. So we're going to allow these to dry overnight, and then in 24 hours we can dust them. So to begin dusting, you're going to need a few flat brushes, and I have some parchment on my surface. And I am putting some cornstarch aside, which is going to be used to dilute the colors. Colors are caramel, burgundy, raspberry, peony, moss green, and forest green, and lastly a navy or a black. Let's start with one of the muted pink buds that is completely dried. So I'm pulling some cornstarch to the side first, and I'll start with the raspberry color, just putting a bit on the edge of my brush and brushing it back and forth with the cornstarch. Next, I'm adding a bit of peony and doing the same to mix the colors. The cornstarch will just help it apply more smoothly so you don't end up over dusting. I'm brushing from the edge of the petal downward because I want the most color to be concentrated at the top of the flower. Just catching all those veins that we added to make sure that they stand out. And of course, reload your brush as necessary. The way in which the petals come together will mean that the top is going to have the most concentrated color, so I'm really dabbing a lot of color right there. And then as we work our way outwards on the bud, there is less and less of the pink, and we're going to add a little bit of green later to show just how fresh this bud is. Next, we'll pull some cornstarch aside so that we can mix our green coloring. And this is going to be for the calyx and also for the base of the bud. So I'm adding some of that forest or leaf green, and I'll add some moss for some warmth. And now I'm adding my black or charcoal or navy coloring just to deepen that color, because we want it to be a couple shades darker than the calyx color that we currently have on the flower. And lastly, I am adding a hint of caramel because I need a little bit more warmth. So just keep adjusting your color until you're happy with it. There's no rush to get the perfect color the first time. I'm always tweaking back and forth between different colors. The next color we will prepare is a bit of burgundy. This is just a very tiny bit that I'm going to be adding onto the calyx because peony calyxes have a little bit of warmth, so I just diluted that with a touch of the cornstarch. So let's begin dusting on our green calyx and just dusting up and down, also catching most of the coloring on the edges, just as we did with the petals. And now I'm dusting the elongated leaf parts. Just getting into anywhere where there would be shadow or you want a little bit more depth. And anywhere where there's veining, of course, we want to bring that out, so dust some more there. And don't forget about dusting the top area because most likely people will be looking at the bud from this angle. And I broke one of my elongated leaf shapes, which is totally fine. I'm just going to find a spot for this bud on the cake that doesn't require that side. I'm just working the color up a bit onto the bud, and I'm adding a little bit of moss green to the side here because I think the moss green is a little bit fresher, like a younger color. So I will add that in little spots here and there, just catching a few different edges with that moss green and also the base of the bud. Now I will add a bit of that burgundy, so just catching it right on those edges. And this just adds a bit of warmth and depth to the calyx, so it's not just flat green. And I'm also adding just a hint on some of those more ruffly or damaged areas on the top of the bud, and I think that's perfect. Let's move on to the burgundy now. So I'm going to have to mix a bit more burgundy here. So we have enough to dust this bud. But again, we don't need a ton of coloring. This is really just to add the highlights and the lowlights on your flower or your bud so that it stands out a little bit more and doesn't look so flat. I generally like to have the base color already done because we've made the gum paste in that color, and I'm going to talk a bit more about this in the Peony course. So just dusting the edges again, catching all that veining, and this is just adding another layer of depth to this beautiful burgundy color. Concentrate that dust wherever you see natural shadows. This will just help bring them out more. Now I'm creating a slightly darker color by adding that black or charcoal color with some of the burgundy. This is just to concentrate it right in the center where the deepest color would reside. Next, we will dust our calyx again, exactly the same way as we did with the blush pink one. Catching any areas with texture or shadow with that beautiful dark green color that we created. Now I'm just going to work a bit of that green color on the bud as well, just like we did before. Don't be afraid of layering colors. And lastly, we will add a bit of that warmth to the calyx. Just brushing gently up and down to add some streaks of the burgundy. Always be sure, even if it's a really dark color you're going for, that there is a bit of cornstarch mixed in with it. This just prevents you from over dusting and getting that really chalky and dull look. This looks great. I think we are all done. And please don't forget to check out my Peony course where I'm really going to go into depth about coloring, layering colors, and getting all those beautiful shadows on dark and light peonies. I'm going to cover everything in the course from creating this beautiful burgundy gum paste to those fluffy petals. We're going to repair petals. I'm going to show you how to arrange them all in a cake, so I really hope you will check that out in the description box below. And thank you so much for watching this video. You can find all of the tools, equipment, etc. in the description box below. Don't forget to subscribe before you head out, and I will see you next time.